All right, I'm going to call to order the February 20th meeting of the Littleton City Council. City Clerk, please take the roll call.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
Present.
Councilmember Cole. Councilmember Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Schlachter.
Here.
Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Council, any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, the agenda is approved. This is public comment time. If you wish to address the City Council under public comment, please make sure you've signed in on the public speaker form before the call to order for this meeting. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by public comment. I will refer the matter to staff to obtain additional information and report back to Council as is appropriate. Okay, we have one person signed up under public comment, two. First is Linda Newfinke.
Good evening, Council. My name is Linda Knufinke from the 4th District. I'm here to talk tonight about your role on Council based on the city's own charter. When you took your oath of office, you vowed to uphold the Constitution, the state's Constitution, the city's charter, the city's code, and ordinances as mentioned in Section 26 of the city's charter. Section 32 of the city's charter requires you to work through the city manager. It says, quote, except for purposes of inquiry, the council and its members shall deal with the administrative service of the city solely through the city manager, and neither the council nor any member shall give orders to any subordinates of the city manager, either publicly or privately. I read this because council has not been upholding this section of the charter. The charter says give orders through the city manager. That means you can never ever tell staff what they can and can't do publicly or privately. You must go through the city manager. Let staff do their job and do not dictate what they can or can't do. I repeat, do not dictate what the staff can or cannot do. That's the city manager's job. In short, butt out. Remember, you made an oath to uphold the charter. And just so you know, the city manager had no idea I would be talking about this. In addition to relying on your city manager, you as council functions as equals. The charter guarantees this by giving the mayor and mayor pro tem no roles other than being the presiding officer and the ceremony head of government as described in section 24 and 25 of the charter. They have a vote just like you do. Read the charter, it's right there. So no one council member has more power than another. This is an important concept because I heard from somebody who lives outside of Littleton who attended a meeting organized by Arapahoe County for mayors, commissioners, and others. Littleton's priorities were talked about at that meeting, and they were something like moving to fire to South Metro, a tax increase, and a direct mayoral election. This bothered me because I knew that you as a council never ever discussed these priorities, nor is there any documentation of any discussion of the priorities. These are not priorities unless you as a council decide and vote on your priorities in a public session as equals. Again, these are not Littleton's priorities until you as a council agree they are priorities. And it gets me that other people outside of Littleton know the council's priorities before you, the council, knows your own priorities. That's not right. Each and every one of you has a voice and you should insist on being able to use it and make it official and vote. Thank you.
Next is Pam Chadbourne.
You can see it.
Bam.
It's not on there, thank you. It's not on
Tyler's upstairs.
Good evening, Council. I'm here for two things. I'd like you to vote no on Resolution 13, and I want to talk about the Grove, and I'm missing 30 seconds. That was not my fault that this didn't focus. So a week from today, 1:30 in the afternoon at the Colorado Court of Appeals downtown, Burkett versus City of Littleton, oral arguments will be heard. This is important to the city. The Grove was built, although it violated 14 paragraphs of our city, our code. That's wrong, and the issue here, let me clarify, because there's been confusion about this, is whether citizens have access to the Board of Adjustment to appeal a decision of staff. The issue is not whether any of these zoning code issues have been violated, because that's never been litigated. The only issue is whether the Board of Adjustment has the power to hear and decide appeals relating to Title 10 of the code. The city is using a site development plan, a paragraph which I won't take the time to show you, but it's here. These are Grove zoning code violations. There's many of them, and I'm sorry, this still is not fitting yet. These have not been litigated yet. And neither has the B2 requirement for residential taking more than 50% of the gross floor area of a structure. These have not been litigated, and I say this partly because Columbine Square is coming up. The original proposal there was for all residential. It is B2. This precedent does not apply, and this decision won't matter to that. So just a couple of comments there. I have too much to say for 5463, but this is a subdivision exemption. Our code says that you may not approve that unless it has full compliance with our code. This does not comply with code because it does not. Our code requires compliance with downtown design standards and guidelines. Our design standards and guidelines are violated by this. It is a slot house, 10 buildings. It is not fronted on the street, and there are several other considerations. Council, I don't have time to say this, but you need legal advice about this. It is not legal for you to approve this now, and staff must bring this information to you for you to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, there's no one else signed up to speak this evening. If there is someone who would like to speak, you're welcome to come down at this point. Okay, seeing no one, we'll move to our consent agenda items. These are items that can be pulled from the consent agenda by any council member. Ordinance 02-2018 is an ordinance on first reading amending Title 10, Chapter 6, Section 3, Paren B of the Municipal Code in order to reference the most recent Federal Emergency Management Agency flood insurance study and flood insurance rate map. Consent agenda item B is ID number 18-061, approval of the February 6, 2018 regular meeting minutes. And I need a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Baggy seconded. Ready to vote? Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, on to general business. Our first item is an update on the transition of the fire dispatch, Littleton Fire Rescue Dispatch, to the South Metro Fire Rescue. And Chief Armstrong's here to present this evening. Chief?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Thank you for having me. I don't have a presentation for you, just more of a verbal update. As you know, back in October, Council signed an intergovernmental agreement for us to move our dispatch services to South Metro. That move took place on December 18th and went as well as we expected it to. We have worked very closely with South Metro in the past. We have like equipment, protocols, policies, procedures. So the transition really happened very seamlessly. We had very small issues that were easily worked out. To date, we have worked with South Metro to reprogram all of our mobile and portable radios, so we're now operating on the same frequencies and same channels. We hear their units dispatch, they hear ours, we can talk to each other. So we're operating from a dispatch standpoint as a single organization. In addition, tonight we had the IDT team here, which is the incident dispatch team. In talking with Tyler, who's one of the managers with South Metro and their dispatch center, came to my attention. I didn't realize how many times we had used it, but since December 18th, they've responded to 8 of our larger incidents. The significance in that really is for the safety of our firefighters. As you know, in our system, when we had a fire, we had dispatchers that continued to answer 911 calls and listen to the fire operation channel. We put firefighters in dangerous situations on a daily basis, and occasionally they get themselves or the situation gets them into trouble. And it's very easy for a dispatcher, if they're dispatching a stroke or a heart attack on one channel, to miss a mayday or a call for help on another. What that incident dispatch team does is it allows us to move our dispatch from the dispatch center to a mobile dispatch area on the scene dedicated just for those firefighters. And having them on 8 different incidences in the last 2 months is pretty significant. And that certainly is a service that we did not have available to us. We continue to work closely with South Metro. They've been very gracious and helpful to us. We've worked through the small little differences that we've had, but our transition was really as seamless as we anticipated. Our firefighters are pretty happy about, the level of service that they're being able to provide. I think South Metro was a little overwhelmed with the volume of calls that they had to dispatch for us. I don't think they were quite used to that, but they certainly have the staffing to provide us the level of service we anticipated. So I want to thank you for your vision and giving us the direction to move forward. Everything that you come to expect in that IGA and the service from South Metro, they have met or exceeded for us. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Jerry?
Yeah, has the staff or any of the equipment been relocated?
Yeah, everything took place on December 18th. We moved the equipment over to South Metro that was identified in the IGA. Staff that was being taken to South Metro moved to South Metro. Some remained here with our PD. So everything took place on December 18th. That was our transition date. We moved it up just a little bit early. There was no charge for it, but we wanted to stay away from the holidays in case we had any issues.
So now that we're dispatch is here in this center, there's available room, space?
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. All right, so it is complete, all the equipment is there now, is with the partners and us. Cool, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions? Karina?
You talked about the volume and just getting adjusted to that level of volume. Has that now been addressed, and was it through just putting more people on at the same time, or just knowing how to manage it?
Yeah, so I think it was just a matter of them getting used to it. So there certainly wasn't any deficiency in the service level that they provided from that. I think it was really more of a shock to them, not really anticipating the call load that they would experience. As you remember in our conversations prior, our dispatch center was staffed with 2 dispatchers. Their dispatch center is staffed with 6. So they certainly have the staffing to handle that call volume. I think it was just something that it was a little greater than maybe what they expected, but we haven't seen any issues in terms of the service delivery.
So they knew the numbers, they just never experienced the numbers.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, when the phone starts ringing, it's a totally different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have our response times been? Have those gone down at all with making this merge?
So our response times are still staying pretty much where they were. Where we're really measuring things now, and we didn't necessarily expect an improvement in response time by moving dispatch, but what we're measuring now is how long does it take for our dispatchers to pick up a 911 call and actually get a unit en route. We have performance standards written into our IGA with them, and they're exceeding all the standards that we put in there.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Clerk, would you mind lowering the overhead? Thank you. Okay, our next item is a resolution. It's Resolution 13-2018. This is a re-subdivision of Lot 1, Block 1, Bolus subdivision, and a portion of unplatted land to create Lot 1, Prince 10, subdivision filing number 1, all of which makes no sense, so hopefully you will be able to make some sense of that for us.
My very best to make sense of that.
Okay, thank you. This is Carol Kuhn. She's a planning manager.
Logically challenged right now. Yes, technologically challenged. I apologize. I blame it on being left-handed, but nobody would buy that. I do have an updated exhibit for everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening, Carol Kuhn representing Community Development. The item before you this evening is case number MIN 17-0005. This is a resolution approving the Prince 10 subdivision filing number 1, Lot 1, final plat, resolution 13-2018. The applicant, Bill Lyons, Prince 10.
Before you begin.
I'm sorry.
You've given us a new document. What is updated? What has been updated?
Oh, so I will get to that in my slide if you want me to cover that now. There is
gonna
one
get to it, okay.
typographical error that was made on sheet 2, so if you flip it over to the backside, the zoning was incorrectly reflected. The project was evaluated against the CA's Central Area Zone District, but it was incorrectly reflected on the preliminary plat. It has been corrected today with a new exhibit before you. The surveyor has signed and certified that the monumentation is still correct and accurate.
Thank you.
So the applicant, Bill Lyons, with Prince 10 LLC, has submitted an application for a final plat to re-subdivide Lot 1, Block 1 of the Bolus subdivision, and a portion of unplatted land just located to the north of the Bolus subdivision. Final plat applications under the City Code are an administrative function of the City Council upon a determination that all city standards are met. Staff is requesting approval of a final
Carol,
plat. Yes.
can you hold 1 minute? Peggy, we'll wait till you get back.
That's the school teacher in her.
Okay. Staff is requesting approval of a final plat to create one legal lot of record. The proposed lot is 12,500 square feet. The zoning is Central Area CA. This is a photo of the site. This is an aerial, and you can see this was before the buildings were demolished. The photo on the right is before the buildings were demolished. This is located at 5463 and 5473 South Prince Street. Section 11.4.2 of the city's subdivision regulations provides for staff to review and approve preliminary plats. A preliminary plat is the initial step to legally subdivide a parcel of land into separate lots and to demonstrate that a certain type of development can be accommodated on the lot. A preliminary plat establishes the configuration of lots and tracts within a proposed development. Subdivision is the act of creating a legal lot of record, not dividing it necessarily into two or more parts. It's creating a legal lot of record. Per section 11.4.2C3 of the City Code, if the Directors of Community Development and Public Works certify that a final plat is in compliance with the approved preliminary plat, the accepted engineering principles, and the ordinances of the city, and the plat is approved as to form by the city attorney, the plat shall be submitted to City Council for final approval. So this is a diagram of where we are in the process. Minor subdivision preliminary plats are approved administratively by staff once the subdivision requirements have been met. As I mentioned, on February 6, 2018, the preliminary plat was approved administratively. On February 20th, 2018, a typographical error on sheet 2 of the preliminary plat was corrected to reflect the correct zoning category of CA Central Area. A copy of this revised preliminary plat has been provided to City Council, the City Clerk's Office, and the City Attorney. Under the minor subdivision requirements, final plats are reviewed and approved by City Council. A site development plan is currently under review for this development. Site development plans are administratively reviewed and approved. There are several criteria that must be met for a minor subdivision. This application was not eligible to be processed as an administrative plat because it was already subject to an administrative platting process under the Bolus subdivision. So it's one of the criteria that you cannot have been processed as an administrative plat. So it therefore bumped it up to a minor subdivision. If it meets all the criteria, then it can be processed as a minor subdivision. If it doesn't meet that criteria, then it gets bumped up to a major subdivision. However, this application did comply with the criteria for a minor subdivision. The proposed plat shall contain 10 or fewer lots, and this subdivision is for one legal lot of record. All lots must abut a dedicated and accepted city street. The single lot abuts South Prince Street. And the proposed plat shall meet the minimum requirements of the subdivision and zoning regulations. The preliminary plat has been evaluated against the minimum lot requirements in the CA zone district, which for multifamily development is 575 square feet. The proposed minimum lot size per individual dwelling unit is 1,250 square feet. The preliminary plat on the next slide was evaluated for consistency with the subdivision regulations. And this was just provided for some background information. The Bolus subdivision was approved on August 2nd of 1999, and this was shown on the left-hand side of the slide. This minor subdivision also includes 6,249.5 square feet, along with the 6,250.5 square feet of unplatted property located to the north of the Bolus subdivision for a total of 12,500 square feet. And there's a table on the right to show you how that breaks down into the two parts. Also, the CA zone district requirements for the preliminary plat needs to meet the underlying zone district requirements for the minimum lot size. Multiple family residential dwelling units are required to have 575 square feet per dwelling unit. This has 1,250 square feet per dwelling unit. Also, as mentioned, a concurrent application for a site development plan is being processed. This is under review. This is just a snapshot in time of what's currently being reviewed under the site development plan. This is an administrative process, however, and not reviewed by City Council or Planning Commission. But this is currently what we have in process right now, that it's 25.35% open space, 1,250 square feet per unit, and the SDP shows building height of 40 feet. There are no setbacks in CA. This is also an exhibit from the SDP, which shows the open space and how it's broken down, how the 25% open space will be verified further, though, through the site development plan process. The final plat proposes one residential lot of 0.287 acres. 3 new easements dedicated to the City of Littleton are also shown on the final plat. These are for various utility purposes to serve the new development. The easements include the following: a 10-foot wide permanent utility and roadway purposes easement along the eastern edge of the property along Prince Street, a 20-foot wide sanitary sewer easement crossing the middle of the property from the eastern to western lot lines, and an 8-foot wide utility easement along the western lot line. Section 1142C3 of the city's subdivision regulations for minor subdivisions for final plats. If the Director of Community Development and the Director of Public Works certify that a final plat is in conformance with the approved preliminary plat, accepted engineering principles and the ordinances of the city, and the plat is approved as to form by the city attorney, said plat shall be submitted to the City Council for final plat approval. The Public Works and Community Development Directors have evaluated the final plat based on compliance with the subdivision regulations, accepted engineering principles, zoning regulations, the comprehensive plan, and the existing and proposed development. Final plats are evaluated for compliance with the provisions of the subdivision regulations. Specifically, the final plat meets all the provisions of the subdivision code in that it was prepared by a registered surveyor. It includes the requested information found in 1151B, including proposed right-of-way dedications, street dimensions, easements, lot dimensions, and addresses by street address and lots and blocks. The property is not located within the 100-year floodplain. The proposed plat meets all the requested information found in 1151C, including a drainage plan and civil construction documents. Public Works staff reviewed and approved the site drainage and civil CDs for the project. The project will not include on-site water quality and detention, as a variance was approved. Further review of the grading and drainage will occur with the site development plan. A subdivision improvement agreement is not required for this project. A right-of-way permit will be required for any work within the public right-of-way. Any necessary Denver water easements will be addressed through separate improvement agreement as part of the site development plan and will be dedicated as separate easements. The proposed final plat complies with the minimum lot size for multiple family dwellings in the CA zone district. Planning staff finds that the proposed development is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and the downtown neighborhood plan. The SDP will be evaluated against the requirements of Subarea 3 in the downtown design standards and guidelines. The proposed lot meets the standard for minimum lot size in CA zone district. Additionally, the applicant has not indicated that the property will be subject to any further subdivision. Referrals for the preliminary and final plats were sent to Denver Water, Xcel Energy, CenturyLink, Comcast, Littleton Public Schools, South Suburban Parks and Recreation District, and Arapahoe County. A copy of the referral matrix is attached to the staff report. Additionally, will-serve letters were provided from Xcel Energy, Denver Water, and the Public Works Department for the sanitary sewer service and are attached to the staff report. Final site drainage has been reviewed with the final plat and site development plan. Engineering has reviewed the final drainage report and both the associated preliminary and final plat and has indicated that the proposed concepts proposed for handling stormwater runoff are acceptable to Public Works Department. Construction drawings and more detailed design will be approved with the site development plan. Staff finds that the final plat for Prince 10, filing number 1, to create one legal lot of record, conforms to the requirements of the city's subdivision regulations, the Central Area Zone District requirements, the City of Littleton Comprehensive Plan and Downtown Neighborhood Plan, and utility requirements. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the final plat, subject to one standard condition of approval. Condition number 1, the final plat shall be recorded with the Arapahoe County Clerk and Recorder's Office prior to the issuance of building permits. Staff is here for any initial questions. The applicant is also here for a presentation.
Questions, Council? Councilmember Elrod.
I have a question. Can you specify under what premise, from a city council perspective, when we're saying we're approving the final plat, based on what decisions, what specific decisions are we basing that final plat on? Because I know you showed us some things that come later on, but some of those criteria is not what we can base our decision on. So if you can articulate what we're deciding on and on what basis.
Councilmember Elrod, members of the council. The council, when it acts on a final plat, is acting in what we call a ministerial capacity. And you are simply basing your decision on the certification of the community development director and the public works director that the plat has met all city requirements. My office has reviewed it. We're prepared to approve it as to form upon council approval. And essentially, those are the only standards that the council is to consider if a final plat did not meet those standards. The Public Works Director and Community Development Director would not certify it. Having certified it, it is entitled to approval.
Okay, so to further continue on that questioning then, you do articulate that, so what Community Development and Public Works, based on the recommendations, it complies with the central area zoning, it complies with the comprehensive plan. Those are some of the elements that went through your diligence to say we're certifying that this meets all of the requirements.
Yes, ma'am. So it's 1142C3. So we look at the comprehensive plan. Another one, look for the lot dimensions. We look at whether or not if it's in the floodplain, if it complies with the plat details located in the subdivision regulations. 1151C, there's a whole bunch of plat details. Has it been prepared by a registered surveyor? Does it meet does it close? Does the boundary survey close? Does it meet the, so there's a bunch of platting details, like functional things that it needs to meet, in addition to does it meet the minimum lot size in the zoning? But all the performance standards are then set into place when you have a site development plan.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Schlechter?
I just had a question about the condition at the end. What is the purpose of having that condition that they record the plat with Arapahoe County?
So it's a requirement of the code that you cannot get a building permit unless you have a legal lot of record. So just putting everyone on notice that before they can go and pull a building permit, they need to create a legal lot of record. Now, this may not go forward. The applicant could always have an option of withdrawing the multifamily project that's on it, and we'd still have a legal lot of record. So we wanted to keep that condition of approval in there and not tie it to a site development plan. But if they have a legal lot of record, they could bring in a building permit for a single-family residential lot, or development, or a commercial development. But all we're doing is creating one legal lot of record. And so we just want to make sure everybody is on notice if a future property owner buys it, that they know they have to do another step before they have to finish this before they can get a building permit.
Okay, thanks. And we are just approving the subdivision of the final plat here, not any future development that may come or may not come forward?
No, if it was a single-family development, it would just go through a building permit process. All site development plans for either commercial or multifamily development are done administratively at a staff level. So all council is going through at this point is to create the legal lot of record.
Okay, and right now the proposal is to put a 10-unit multifamily.
That's the proposal that is being concurrently evaluated, yes.
Okay, and the minimum square footage for a lot is 12,500 square feet, and that's the exact size of this lot, is that?
So the minimum requirement in the CA zone district is 575 square feet per unit according to the central area zone district.
That's for the square footage of a unit. I'm talking about the...
No, that's the lot size per unit.
Okay.
So they would need to have that available land. So if they wanted to have more than the lot size, so divide 12,500 divided by 575, that's the number of units you could get. It's a backdoor way to get into density.
Any other questions?
Are you making any exceptions, or are there any exceptions to this?
There was a variance granted for the detention and water quality.
Okay.
Okay, council, any other questions? Jerry?
City Attorney, did I hear you say this is entitled to be approved?
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez, members of the council, yes. This is a ministerial act by the city council, and when a final plat meets all the requirements of your code, you are essentially obligated to approve it. You could actually, a court would overturn a city council action where the city council a plat having met all those requirements if the council were to actually reject it. The council's action would be in risk of being overturned as being in excess of the council's legal authority.
Okay. Question for you. A couple times in the staff communication, I think somewhere, maybe it was in the report or resolution, you said it promotes the general welfare for Littleton. That's kind of a general phrase. What specifically is the promotion that it's doing for Littleton?
So we evaluate this for consistency with the comprehensive plan. It provides an opportunity for residents to live, play, work, and that was, I believe, mentioned in there. It's another housing type to allow residents to have an opportunity to live, play, work in the area where they live, play, work, shop. It's a circular thing that's in the comprehensive plan. Have an opportunity.
So you're just repeating what you said. It meets the city's comprehensive plan and it promotes. Isn't that kind of just repeating it then?
Well, and that
I guess.
I'm trying to understand what you're asking, sir.
You said that it does meet the city's
Yes.
comprehensive plan, and then you go on to say that it promotes general welfare. Isn't that what the comprehensive plan is for?
Yes.
Okay, I guess I'm thrown
not
off
sure.
a little bit. I mean, it's a great statement and phrase. I just don't understand why we're repeating. Do we have a definition for promotes general welfare for the city?
Generally, that is viewed in the law as essentially a legislative determination by the city council that you are entitled to give whatever credence to facts that you so choose as promoting the general welfare. Here, I would suggest that you would look at, A, whether this complies with the general plan, comprehensive plan. Also, if there's any specific corridor area plans, does it comply with those? If there's a specific development plan, like the downtown development design guidelines, does it comply with those? And is it does the plat meet all of the standards that the city has established for a final plat? And I think those would be the factors that from a legal standpoint would be relevant to that decision as to whether it comports with the general welfare of the city. And I would suggest my analysis of this plat is it does comport with the general welfare of the city.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Carol.
Any other questions?
I'll have a follow-up then to that question. So that statement was kind of that general statement that's in the comprehensive plan, but we do have a downtown neighborhood plan. So what were some of the specific elements in the downtown neighborhood plan that this conforms to? Because that would have been part of your decision-making, correct?
Yes. I will have to look that up in just a moment. So there is that the compliance with the comprehensive plan, and then the neighborhood plans are an element of the comprehensive plan. So, it's that overlapping of what they are part of each other. The comprehensive plan.
There are a number of policies in the downtown neighborhood plan.
So
if you
it complies with opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play where they work, shop, and play where they live, adding 10 units of housing to the existing mixture of uses in the downtown Littleton area.
So that's actually from the downtown neighborhood plan, so it's the more specific one. Okay. And then the final comment on here on the staff analysis that it's consistent with the intent of the downtown design standards, but really that is not a criteria that you use at this phase.
Correct, and that should have been referenced that it's evaluated with the site development plan, so that was something that was misstated in the staff report. It should state that all of the downtown design standards are implemented with the site development plan.
Okay, so that'll come at a later phase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I had one, I'm sorry, one. Did you say the applicant's doing a presentation?
Yes, they have a brief presentation.
And the applicant is also the owner of the property, right?
Actually, I believe the surveyor is here to do, since it's a plat, the surveyor is here to do a brief presentation, but the property owner is here as well.
Well, on the application, it says they are. I'm just asking you. They are indeed the same.
Yes. Bill Lyons is here this evening. The architect for the site development plan is here this evening, and the surveyor is here this evening.
Thank you.
So you have their whole team.
All right. Thanks.
Do we have 3 presentations, or can we have one presentation?
Just one.
Okay. Yes. You can come on down. Please introduce yourself.
Cameron Watson with Point Consulting. And if you don't want a presentation, you don't have to have one.
Yeah.
But I'm the surveyor. I can answer any questions about the survey itself.
Council, any questions for the surveyor? No questions? Do you have a presentation that you want to do?
It's only, it's just a visual representation of the plat itself.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, council, in order to discuss, I need a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 13-2018 concerning Prince 10 subdivision filing number 1, case number MIN 17-0005, subject to the following conditions: that the final plat shall be recorded with the Arapahoe County Clerk and Recorder's Office prior to the issuance of building permits.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, ready to vote?
Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is an ordinance. This is a public reading, second hearing and a public reading. This is an ordinance 032018 on first reading, on second reading, adopting and entering into the trust agreement for the Colorado Firefighter Heart and Cancer Benefits Trust and taking other action in connection therewith.
I caught that too the other day. I was like,
Exactly. Staff, do we have a presentation?
hey, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
We're losing people to the Olympics, you know, with this silent time. So what's going on, man? How are you? Any good jokes?
I can't remember jokes. I hear them and they just,
Yeah, is that right?
if I could remember, I might just throw them up.
I can't share all of mine.
Oh, I'm sure not.
There we go, sorry about that. Good evening, council. I come to you tonight.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, my name
Jerry knows you, but for the rest of us.
Yes, of course. I'm Julie Lanier, I'm the acting HR director.
Thank you, Julie.
So I come to you tonight with the policy question asking for your support entering into the trust agreement for the Colorado Firefighter Heart and Cancer Benefits Trust. So you might be asking yourself, what exactly is the Cancer Trust? The purpose of this statute is to provide supplemental income and reimbursement for out-of-pocket costs not otherwise paid for by insurance coverage to firefighters who contract covered cancers and to reduce the cost of workers' compensation. This is not a replacement for workers' compensation coverage or any other kind of medical insurance. The revised statute does not eliminate the obligation of an employer of firefighters to participate in the state workers' compensation system, nor does it eliminate the right of a firefighter to pursue benefits under the state workers' compensation system. Rather, it provides a practical alternative for firefighters to deal with the cost and burdens of covered cancers without being forced to rely on recovering compensation under the current presumption. This bill gives local governments the option to join the trust. Should they choose to do so, workers' compensation expenses for these local governments may decrease. The precise impact to local governments will vary across jurisdictions and will depend on a number of factors, including the number of compensable cancer benefit claims received from firefighters. Under this new statute, a firefighter must have at least 5 years of full-time continuous employment and be diagnosed with cancer within 10 years of ceasing employment as a firefighter. Currently, the City of Littleton operates under the 2007 presumption of cancer legislation, in which it is up to the city to prove that the employee or former employee's cancer is not a direct result of their employment and the associated risks. For example, if an employee makes a cancer claim, the individual does not receive an immediate workers' compensation payout until an invasive investigation is completed. Once a claim is filed, the city puts the claim under a notice of contest, which allows the city time to investigate the claim without denying or approving the claim. The city's workers' compensation attorney begins investigating the root cause of the cancer by reviewing medical records, exposures, prior employment, family history, and often the city funds a second opinion in order to seek better information to help determine if the cancer is work-related. Once opposing counsel seeks a hearing to determine compensability of the claim, the city agrees to a hearing and schedules a settlement conference. The purpose of the settlement conference is to come to a mutual agreeable resolution between the individual and the city. However, if a resolution cannot be reached, the hearing will take place. As you can see, this is a cumbersome process in which legal fees are incurred. Additional stress is inflicted on the individual, as this process typically takes years to resolve. So the benefits to entering the trust is that it is a multiple employer health trust to provide benefits to eligible firefighters by paying contributions into an established trust. An employer participating in the trust will be exempt from the presumptive eligibility mandate for workers' compensation for firefighters with certain types of cancer. No investigation into the cause of cancer will be needed upon confirmation of eligibility. In order for a firefighter to be eligible for the trust, they must be a full-time firefighter for 5 years. While it would not make sense for a firefighter to file a workers' compensation claim, by law they still maintain the right to do so. The burden of evidence is now on the firefighter to prove that the cancer was job-related. The Cancer Trust would offset the workers' compensation cost in the event a claim was filed. So as you can see, the fiscal impacts for the remainder of this year is $265 annually per eligible employee. We have approximately 118 eligible employees, bringing us up to approximately $26,000. The annual minimum charge is set by the trust and subject to change as the trust increases or decreases their annual minimum charge. It is the recommendation of the staff to approve the trust agreement. Funds for the city to join the trust were included and approved in the 2018 budget. Finally, our option or our alternative is to not join the trust and to continue to operate under the 2007 presumption of cancer legislation. What questions can I answer for you guys?
Councilmember Valdez.
Oh, thank you. So if fire ends up moving to South Metro, what then happens with this plan?
So we have an agreement with the trust that they will allow us to pay for a phantom employee. They charge per employee, so we would just pay for the next 10 years. We would pay for one employee a year to keep us active in the trust.
The 265?
Unless they increase the cost, but yeah, that's what it currently is set at.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So to stay active in the trust means if within those 10 years a firefighter has cancer, that's where our liability would lie, that we can pay them out those different levels of the trust.
Correct.
Is that the reason why we're continuing for 10 years and staying in the trust?
Correct, and it's for if a firefighter retires or if a firefighter goes to another organization that is not in the trust or something like that, rather than them coming back and making a workers' compensation claim on us, they would file with the trust. So that's why we would want to stay active. If we didn't stay active in the trust, they wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah.
Okay. And again, we just have to do that for one employee, one
Correct.
phantom employee to stay in the trust.
Correct. There is a letter from the trust showing their agreement to allow the city to do that. That was included in the staff communication.
Okay. So essentially for us, it's a $26,000 expense this year because we are still an employer of 18 firefighters when they, if and when they do move to another district or another organization. While we are no longer an employee of 119, we are an employer of one. We are still part of the trust, and therefore we can still provide for our firefighters.
That's correct.
God forbid.
Mayor, Council, from a legal standpoint, I completely recommend the council going ahead with this. The presumptive cancel legislation, which is a very common thing, this is not unique to Colorado, a number of states have this, makes workers' compensation claims very, very problematic because you're essentially starting out with the fact that you have a compensable illness, that the employee is entitled to compensation, and it results in the claims being more complicated to litigate, more lengthy in time. This is a great option, not just for the city, but for the employee, because they're able to move through this process much quicker. And then the ability for the city to stay in this for the 10-year period afterwards is a protection against and this happens with cancer claims. A person may get cancer 3-4 years from now, and then the question is, was it under the current employer or the past employer? This gives us that coverage. I completely concur with the Acting Human Resources Director in that this is in the best interest of the city and recommend the council proceed with it.
Thank you. Council, any additional questions? Seeing none, we need a motion. Oh. Public hearing. Public hearing.
Oh, sorry, public hearing.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we will open the public hearing at 7:21. No one has signed up for it. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing at 7:21. And now, council, is there any debate?
You have to have a motion.
Mike, I'll do a motion.
We'll do debate first, and then we'll do a motion for discussion. No?
Yeah,
Okay,
do-
we'll take a motion.
I'll do a motion.
I move
Do a
to
motion.
I move to approve an ordinance on second reading adopting and entering into the trust agreement for the Colorado Firefighter Heart and Cancer Benefits Trust.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
Yep.
Yep.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Now, that takes us to comments and reports. City manager, do you have a report?
Mayor, there is a
Oh,
7B.
I went right past that one. Yes, I was. Yeah. Okay, we have a second reading public hearing. This is ordinance 62018. This is second reading amending the 2018 Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Budget. And we have a presentation from staff.
Yep, getting that presentation up. It appears we had a lefty up here before, so I got to move the mouse.
Oh.
So I'll see what I can do.
All the excuses. Big job.
So we'll finish in a couple of hours, so we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we won't.
So Keith Reister, Public Works Director. I'm here to give you a quick presentation update since council's talked quite a bit about this issue. Up till now, related to an additional appropriation to the Sewer Utility Fund budget for Littleton's portion of the proposed biogas project at the Littleton Englewood Wastewater Treatment Plant. I have Tiffany here with me as well. On the financial side, we don't have anybody from the treatment plant because they are currently presenting at the...
You said Englewood Littleton?
I was looking up there having a dyslexic moment. I'm sorry about that.
I'm listening.
All right, gotcha. Thanks. We don't have anyone here from the treatment plant since they are currently at this moment presenting at the Englewood Council meeting since their meeting shifted to tonight due to President's Day. So just as a quick little history, I want to give you a couple of quick slides. This is a timeline for the biogas project for 2017. I'll give you some highlights about the project detail in a second. Overall, this is a project that invests about $8 million to recapture a large chunk of methane that is produced during the remediation process at the plant. Currently, about 90% of that is vented to the environment via flaring. The first 10% is recaptured to use as part of the digester process to fire the digesters. The reason it is flared versus direct emissions is methane is about 2.5 times worse for greenhouse gases than just burning it to carbon. So that's why it's flared off. It's very common in a lot of places, whether it's landfills or others. During 2017, City Council talked about this particular project 5 times, including study sessions in July, October, January, during the joint meeting related to the treatment plant at the plant in August, as well as during the budget meetings in September. As a recap, the schedule that's proposed for the biogas project for 2018, which is up there right now, basically, if the project moves ahead between February and tail end of May, most of the project detail negotiations would start related to developing agreements for the engineering, construction, those kind of things, and then it would return to the supervisory committee in July for final approval. Right about that time also is the proposed typical joint city council meeting between the two cities on that. And then it would go to the Englewood City Council for the final approval for the contract package to actually construct it. In our partnership agreement, they are the business operating partner, the City of Englewood is, and then construction would begin in the September timeframe. This is a recapture from the slide that you saw a couple of weeks ago related to the different options that were looked at. This is the exact same slide. It hasn't been modified, laying out the cash financed version, which is what's being proposed, versus the municipal lease financed option, as well as a third party option. You can see the revenue over 10 years and the risk and those types of things are recaptured in there. A few financial questions very quickly. The current sewer fund, we do about $15 million a year in revenue. We do about $13 million a year in expenses. Our reserves at the end of 2017 were $25 million. We obviously have to do year-end adjustments, and then if you take out the $4 million, our reserves would still be about $20 million to $21 million within that fund, even after funding this project.
And that's Littleton reserves only.
That is Littleton reserves only. The RINs, which are the discussion about part of the financing package for this, the RIN program was created overall at the federal level to encourage alternative fuels usage in transportation vehicles. The goal of the RIN program is to provide buyback credits to, as you can see, the goal was by 2022 to use 36 billion gallons annually of diesel fuel alternative in transportation vehicles. At this point in time, the most recent number I saw is that number's currently hovering around 30 to 32 billion gallons a year right now in RIN credits. The current legislation runs the RIN credits through 2022. That's when the legislation ends. So the RIN credits may or may not be available after 2022, beginning in 2023. Speaking with other professionals in the business, they feel strongly that the program will continue after that, but that's only what they've shared with me. This is not my area of expertise, that particular area. The other alternative uses, if the RIN credits were not available, would be CNG fueling. Some fleets have started the conversion over the last decade to CNG. They tend to be municipal fleets, which use a centralized location. Some private fleets as well, UPS, FedEx are also big CNG players, especially here in the West. There's other options and other uses, private buy and sell agreements. Obviously, the return on investment would be different and longer if the ROI credits did. The other part is I was able to do a little additional research since our last meeting, and I was able to find this case study from Grand Junction in Mesa County's joint wastewater treatment plant. They installed a very similar project that went online in April of 2015 for a cost of $2.8 million. They do about 120,000 cubic feet of methane gas a day. Our number down there at the bottom, we do about 470,000, 69,000 on average a day at our wastewater treatment plant. It really varies during the year. Seasonal goes from about 375 to about 1 million a day, depending on the flow in the plant and so forth. They spent $2.8 million on that project. That's also included a 5-mile, almost a 6-mile long pipeline to pipe to a joint usage facility they have for Grand Valley Transit, City of Grand Junction in Mesa County. They are charging $1.50 a gallon to their fleet for the liquid CNG that they're using for that, and their revenue over the last 2 years has been $268,500. Their projection for 2018, which is what is in their revenue documents, is they expect to do 400 gallons of fuel a day with a revenue projection of $219,000 in fuel sales and $489,000 in RIN credit revenue for the project that they have online, and they're just past just about the 2-year mark, actually almost the 3-year mark on that project at this point in time for having it installed. So that's just a quick snapshot of sort of a peer agency here in Colorado that has a similar project online. And so with that, I'll take any questions. We can answer any financial questions as well.
Keith, great job for not being the expert. John, unfortunately, is not here, who is the expert over at Inglewood. How solid are we on that $8 million cost? I know our cost is only $4 and Inglewood is $4, and our RFP hasn't been sent out yet, but how solid do we think we are on that?
You know, in talking with the staff, spending time with the staff over there, both our staff and the Inglewood staff with the treatment plant, you know, that next step is design work. And some of that's going to be really tied to how that design engineering goes. The market, you know, this particular market, the industrial market with contractors is pretty strong right now. I think that'll be reflected. This project's, it's going to be the proximity and difficulty of the project to the actual gas line is relatively limited because the Excel line is right there by the plant. So I from talking to their engineering team while we were there as well, $8 million is very much on the, I think, a very conservative number, meaning I expect it to come in less than that. You know, it's if we were doing an engineer's estimate on a job, hopefully we'd do the same thing.
Okay.
So,
other questions? Yes, Karen. You had a staff response to a question, and in that you said that you're projecting project payback in 3.2 to 4.0 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you also said that, I'm not trying to box you into anything, I'm trying to get clarification, that RINs may expire in 2022. So it seems like we have a possibility of 3 years of payback, and but the payback doesn't finalize for 3.2 to 4.0.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's am I right that if the RINs disappear in 2022 that we haven't really gotten good payback on the investment?
The RINs are currently set to expire at the end of 2022, so they would be through the end of 2022. So this project would be online in 2019. So you do have, you know, maybe a year window there.
But you were saying second to third quarter. And I'm just kind of, a lot of projects run late, so it...
Not mine.
Not here in Littleton.
Generally speaking, mine don't run late.
The new group
That's
here.
part of our goal as a professional
Is this your
staff.
project? Do you have
I will not be
control of
managing this project, but we have oversight as the supervisory committee. You know, certainly, you know, from our perspective, as you know, collectively as the owners of this thing, the sooner a project like this gets online, the better it is for our financial picture.
Well, sure.
You know, that's a good thing. You know, obviously, none of us can predict what's going to happen in Washington, D.C., and likewise for transportation funding. So what's going to happen after 2022, I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that the industry is supportive of the RINs, generally speaking, from a variety of angles. That's all I can really speak to on that. The 3.2 to 4 year projection Tiffany put together, so she can answer that if you'd like.
Nice one.
I would tell you that she did a very conservative estimate, though, and she's more than happy to talk about that.
But before you get started, so if the rims go away, do we still, the project is still self-supportable?
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to try to address that question. I think in the worst case, if at the end of 2022, for whatever reason, the RINs were to go away, which we as staff in our consulting firms find very unlikely, but if it did, then it could be in a position where we would not have the quickest return back on that investment. So we would have to look at some other alternatives on how to use that gas. And I think that's the point of our Public Works Director, Keith Reister, pointing out the Grand Junction example where they look to compress natural gas as part of a fleet alternative. So that would be the kinds of things that the plant would have to look towards in order for us to recoup the full investment of that $8 million in total.
And I'll just kind of touch on the 3.2 to 4 years. Just as Keith said, the quicker that we get the project online, the quicker we can take advantage of the RINs. I feel like working with Inglewood, we were very conservative in our RIN estimates for the next 3.5 to 4 years. We did $2 million total for both entities, so $1 million each through the end of 2022. That's very conservative because I think we've seen numbers up to at least 2.5, maybe 2.7 million a year that would be shared amongst both partners. So I think just being conservative, if we can get it online quicker and get those RIN credits, we could certainly have that payback less than 4 years.
So getting back to my question, so it's not self-sustainable then without RIN? Unless we find something else to do. Do we have a plan B then?
I think that was part of the discussion with the two councils here for the past year is what are the alternatives that we could pursue. Our forecast is that the RIN concept will probably continue for the foreseeable future. At some point in time, if it does discontinue, then we would have to look to some other alternatives to realize additional savings beyond just flaring. And so that's why previous work was looking at compressed natural gas and fueling other fleets, including the private sector, I think was part of that analysis.
Okay. So for the break-even point, depending on when we get this thing up and running, would be in 2022 or 2023?
Exactly.
3 to 4 years.
Depending on what the RIN credits are that are coming in the out years.
Okay,
yes.
So it's lining up right there, and then most likely the RIN credits will continue, but if not, there are other options to continue earning on this.
Exactly. And just so you know, in my projections, I actually did taper off the RIN credits as if in the unlikelihood that they were to discontinue, I did taper that off in the years beyond 2022.
Any other questions?
So one of the important factors that we have to consider, and you kind of alluded to this, is that it's in our best interest to get this up and going so that we minimize that potential exposure of the RIN credits no longer being available to us. So this question is for Keith. Is there any, if there is any risk to the project timeline, where do you see that coming up? Like at what point of the project do you see the greatest unknown of how it's going to go?
In actually constructing the project, my biggest concern would be we're still in a relatively hot construction market. So, you know, really what happens to the bid market itself. There isn't a lot of industrial construction going on in the Front Range, which helps us. There's a lot of other construction, but industrial is fairly limited here in the Front Range, other than as you get further away from the metro area in the oil and gas sector. So that could really be the only impacting factor. The engineering design, in meeting with the consultants, they feel like that's going to go pretty quickly because it's a pretty standard project from that perspective. You know, I've personally experienced this in the waste sector, so I expect that design to go fairly quickly and then get it on the street and have it come back. I don't inspect, there's really no state process or anything that we have to go through from that perspective. This is a local project and it would go through the local regulatory process.
Any other questions?
So otherwise, what you just said, we're not reinventing the wheel on building this thing, because that, like you said, we don't have a bid yet on what it will cost.
No, based on the work with the treatment staff has done with the consulting firms, there's a lot of installations. I mean, even from a staff perspective, as I went out to educate myself, I mean, I could identify at least a couple of dozen treatment plants that are, of significant capacity that have similar situations. Grand Junction happens to be the closest one to us with that perspective. So.
Any other questions?
I do have one, I'm sorry. And it's probably
This
more
is Jerry's last question.
Probably more for Tiffany. Now I feel like making up another one. So our Littleton reserves are 25 million?
Approximately, yes, at the end of
And
2017.
Inglewood is 6 million, is that right?
I don't remember the exact
something
number.
that seems to me, well, that's
Much lower than Littleton, yes.
Yeah. So then we're going to use about 4 of our reserves, and they're going to use 4 of them. But so then they're going to use 2/3 of their reserves. If something were to happen, I don't know what that would be, but something were to happen, is Littleton able to float a loan to Inglewood
If I may, Mayor, actually, I have discussed that with the city manager. For the right interest rate, I might propose that to council.
At least
so it is allowable then?
We'd have to do the appropriate intergovernmental agreements, and as long as it's something that and this would constitute something that we both mutually have the ability to do, we would be able to do an intergovernmental agreement for that kind of loan. And again, obviously, that gets into other questions like in any commercial loan, security, repayment, interest, and those types of things. So those would all be things that we would consider in that process.
Thanks.
So I have a question. So would that loan come out of our regular money or out of our sewer fund money?
I think my understanding is that Inglewood has actually got their own options internally to borrow from perhaps other funds, and they're not looking to the city of Littleton. But if for whatever reason that was to come back to council for consideration, I would be recommending the sewer fund. That's the one we have the most latitude in here.
Because that's what I didn't see that we had a whole lot of money otherwise.
We do not.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Do we have any other projects coming up that we need this money for? I mean, we have quite a bit of savings there.
So, we do have about 25 million, and in our 5-year projections, I've already included about 24 million additional dollars related to capital projects that the plan has already let us know that is likely to come online. So anything above that, potentially, but I've got 23 million in our projections currently, so I'm pretty comfortable with it.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have just kind of a comment question. If Inglewood does decide that they are not interested in participating, would it be feasible for the city of Littleton to take on the full responsibility and then reap the full payback for our ratepayers?
Well, practically speaking, certainly. I think that's a financial decision. Obviously, we would have to look at the long-term rates and how that would affect the sewer fund over the, say, 5 years. But practically speaking, sure, if the council wanted to do that, we certainly could.
But Inglewood has approved this, have they not?
No.
It's actually,
there's
it's already in their budget. It's already in their 2018 budget, their 4 million share. So it's already been appropriated on their side.
Appropriated, but it hasn't been approved.
Right.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Keith. So we'll open the public hearing at 7:43, and there's no one signed up to speak, but if there's someone who'd like to speak, Pam?
Oh, I didn't say this earlier, but I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So I know there's some suspicion about this. I don't quite understand that. It seems to me well-founded. I like the work that staff has done, and I respect it. Here's my question. Long-term, we are going to address climate change as a nation, as a state, as a locality. I want to know long-term if this is the best answer, because we need to mitigate carbon gases going into the atmosphere. We must do that. And if we don't, the people who come after us will do that. So I want to know what happens if we're more aggressive in controlling these gases. How does this work out? You know, the RINs are there, and people are making a big deal out of them and focusing on it. There's a whole bunch of other considerations out there. What if we want to be more aggressive about controlling these gases or using the products, making our waste pay and be useful, and changing the way that it impacts the environment to lessen the impact? I want to know the right solution, the best solution, the strongest solution to reduce climate change and make these products pay for themselves and maybe even bring income to us. So I'm actually asking for more, in a way. I think maybe more is possible. So that's a challenge for us and maybe for the future, but I think we should take it on. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Pam. Thanks. Anybody else? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing at 7:45. Any debate? Now I need a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance on second reading amending the 2018 Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Budget.
Peggy seconded. Council, any discussion before a vote?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment here. You know, I'm going to go ahead and vote for this. I think, you know, we have the money. We have a proven system. I believe at our last study session, John stood up and said that they just recently did this same exact project over in Brighton. Long term, I think it's going to be a great investment. And what we're doing right now is we're flaring this off. So let's take advantage of this gas and let's reuse it for the right purposes. And the 4 years to recuperate our costs, I think, is well worth. I'm not even going to call it a gamble. I think it's just a smart decision.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay.
I'm very much in favor of environmental conservation efforts. The part about this that really bothers me is the financial aspect with the RINs that may not be around all that long. And so I look at that as we're gambling with $4 million of taxpayer money, which may or may not pay off in the long run. When we talk about what we could come up with Plan B if the RINs do go away. However, biogas there's a lot of technical aspects of biogas that I know from my the profession I retired from that make it pretty iffy. So I want to be very clear. I'm very much in favor of the environmental aspect of it, but the financial part makes me nervous.
Any other comments?
I'll make a comment. So I too had some concerns about the financial risk potentially associated with this, but I think what I have seen and what has also been shared tonight is that we are able to mitigate some of that risk based on how quickly we can get this built. And further, there are already some options out there that are being used in other areas. So while we don't have a firm Plan B now, because again, 3 years from now will be a different environment, we do know that there are some options available for us. So from my position, I think we are able to mitigate that risk. And I do see this as an investment, as opposed to money that is spent that there will not be any return. This truly has a potential as an investment that will continue to contribute in the long term to be able to perhaps be even more innovative in the future with more things like this. So I will be supporting this.
Other comments?
Yeah, I will also lend my support to this. I think the environmental benefits are great. I think the financial risks, while they're there, are minimal and will allow us to turn a waste into potential revenue. So I think it makes a lot of sense to move forward and see what happens. I think with the RIN credits potentially expiring in 2022, that's right about when the break-even point is. So I'm not too worried about the lack of RIN credits hurting us financially.
Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, council, are you ready to vote? Oh, we're missing a vote. Carol. Oh, there.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Fay voting no. The motion carries.
Thank you, staff. Now it's comments and reports. City manager.
No report, Mayor.
City attorney, do you have any?
No report, Mayor.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Elrod. Any report?
Only that we are, as part of DRCOG and the decisions that have happened at DRCOG, where the funding and the prioritization of funding will be at the sub-regional level. I will be participating in the first sub-regional meeting that I will be attending this week with Arapahoe County, which is one of the bigger buckets of funding. So I'll be able to give a readout from that at our next meeting, hopefully.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay.
As the liaison to the Fine Arts Board, I would like to encourage everyone to go take a look at the brand new photographic display. It's called Eye of the Camera, and then the title of the show is Overdue. And the artists submit work, whatever their interpretation of overdue is.
Excellent.
No report.
Okay. Peg, do you have a report?
Yes, so I attended the CML Policy Committee meeting last week, and I asked the mayor the best way to share a report, and she suggested that I submit a report to the city clerk so she can post that for you all and others. So I think there were about 16 different policy issues. So
Great.
I will get that out.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, got some sad news this afternoon. Heard that Pat Donahue not only lost his mother-in-law, but also his wife over the last couple of days. So prayers for Pat Donahue and his family.
Oh,
Goodness gracious.
Jeez. Councilmember Valdez.
No report.
No report. Okay. I don't have a report, but I do have a comment. You know, it's part of the job to take the hits. We'll take them, and I'll take them, and take them, and take them, and take them. But at some point, and I think I've hit that point after 10 and a half years, there is a message that continues to be sent that I don't think is appropriate for this community. There were comments made this evening that were probably at best third-hand comments accusing violation of the charters and Constitution and privilege of serving as a mayor of a community. And I'm making these comments primarily for the public because I know that my council knows that when I am representing this community, I'm representing it, and when I'm representing this council, I'm representing it within all of the rights and privileges of this job. And I don't step outside of those, and I don't take advantage of those. And I do not speak for this council unless this council has made a decision as a body. I never have, and I never will. And this community needs to rest assured that this council is at your service, that this council operates at the highest level of professionalism, of ethics, and in service of the honor that you have bestowed upon us, we will continue to do so. And that is our commitment. And I, at this point, feel like I can speak for council, that all of us are up here to do that job and to do the best that we can, and that we will continue to serve at that level. I don't have any report other than that. We are going to hold a study session immediately following this meeting. We'll take a 10-minute break after adjournment. The study session will include a update from our judge, Judge Fellman, who has graciously enjoyed our business meeting this evening. And then we will have the study session on the wildlife ordinance, which we moved off of a second reading a couple of weeks ago. So we will convene at 8:05 in the community room. You're welcome to enjoy refreshments. This meeting is adjourned.